What was the deal with Voldemort's robes? How did the power of makeup allow one actor to play 3 different characters? Who passed out during filming due to an uncomfortable costume? And did the epilogue scene almost fail to happen because of the horrible makeup? Hi, I'm Dylan. Let's find out. Voldemort was real? Believe it or not, the Dark Lord's look was not created entirely with CGI. The Harry Potter crew wanted to add as many practical effects as possible, which meant that Ralph Fiennes had to spend a lot of time in a makeup chair. After all, who said it would be easy to turn a handsome actor into a noseless, snake-like Voldemort? But it could have been worse. Since there were many underage actors on the set, the crew was limited in time because laws don't allow young actors to work for long hours. For the makeup team, this meant that they had to practice a lot before starting to work with Fiennes on the set to make it quicker.
So I had to wear funny little dots on my head, which they will use to digitally remaster my conch.
Genius as they are, they managed to cut his makeup time to only 2 hours. To turn the actor into a subhuman monster, they needed eyebrow blockers, temporary tattoos that imitated veins on his head, fake teeth, and fingernails.
I was very keen not to have too much makeup on. I was very keen to be physically quite free to move.
The only feature that had to be CGI'd was Voldemort's absent nose. The visual effects team had to edit out the actor's real nose from every shot and replace it with snake-like slits. And there was one more thing about the Dark Lord that you probably didn't notice. His robes got lighter in color with every destroyed Horcrux. Compare how pitch black they looked at the beginning to the grayish robes Voldemort wore in the final scene. See the difference? It symbolized his powers fading away. Subtle, right? How did Harry breathe underwater? In the Goblet of Fire, the second task of the Triwizard Tournament required the contestants to dive into the Great Lake. Each one of them had their own way of breathing underwater. For Harry, a plant named gillyweed allowed him to grow gills. And if you think that Dan Radcliffe didn't actually have to film these scenes underwater and have real gills on his neck, you're so wrong. First of all, the actor had to work with the whole team of divers who taught him to hold his breath for extended periods.
Most of the shots we work on, he was shot in the blue screen tank.
This part included an interesting turn of events, and you can learn more about it in our other video about the on-set struggles of the Harry Potter cast.
I think everyone will be very, very impressed. I think you'll be letting people down.
And secondly, before even submerging into the water, Dan had to have the gills literally created on his neck.
You're dealing with a huge number of problems already. The minute you go underwater with that.
The fishy parts were made out of silicone, and it took about an hour and a half to apply them. That's right. Just to make those underwater scenes, Dan had to spend nearly as much time in the makeup chair as his greatest enemy. But the whole thing was totally worth it because the result we saw, the flowing and billowing gills, looked terrific. Various versions of Dobby. Who didn't like Dobby? And who didn't cry when he died in the Deathly Hallows? I think it could only be those who never stopped realizing that the beloved house elf wasn't real. In the Chamber of Secrets, he wasn't even there. The character was completely digitalized.
When I did it in the second film, it was very much me in a sound studio working with the film that had already been shot, with a ping pong ball on a stick.
And when the actors talked to Dobby, they actually spoke to an empty space in front of them. Only sometimes, Toby Jones, the actor who voiced the elf, would step up to the set to create the presence of his character. This changed in the Deathly Hallows, though, where an actual human being portrayed Dobby. It was actress Diane Gibbons.
It's all the moves, isn't it? This creature, but I'm better.
She wore a bald cap and other prosthetics on the set and filmed in front of the green screen. By the time she appeared on the screen, she'd changed so much that even today, when she tells people that she played Dobby, they don't believe her. But Diane doesn't really care because she had so much fun on the set. It was great fun. I enjoyed it. And there was great camaraderie amongst the other actors, the actress shared. And here's one more interesting fact. Gibbons was one of dozens of small actors to appear in the franchise. Many others would play another folk inhabiting the wizarding world, goblins. The most challenging creatures to make. You might think that the hardest part of the goblins was finding actors of the appropriate height, but that was actually the easy part. Here's what creature effects supervisor Nick Dudman said about making it happen. The goblins were tough to create. First, it was essential to get away from any obvious approaches. Second, the technology at the time seemed to be against us. And finally, there were so many of them. Yeah, there were a lot, and each one had to look different.
They was pulled on over the actor's head, yeah.
The prosthetic ears, chins, and noses the actors who portrayed the goblins had to wear were made of silicone, a material that initially seemed to be unreliable to Dudman, but now he knows that it's one of the best materials he could have used. Silicone is the nearest thing to human skin I've come across," he commented.
They look so real.
Interestingly, one of the most challenging things about the Goblin look was their eyebrows. They required special attention because they always had to be pre-curled, one hair at a time. So it's a good thing that they didn't have to do it for each movie. And now, let's talk about one particular Goblin, a master of transformation. In fact, it's actually 2 goblins and also 2 different versions of Professor Flitwick. All of these characters were played by the same actor, Warwick Davis. And this was possible because makeup artists spent about 4 hours applying the prosthetics that would turn him into the Charms Professor. They'd attach 5 silicone face pieces and 5 hair pieces to the actor's face to turn him into Flitwick. The same amount of time was spent on creating his other character, the goblin named Griphook.
Griphook has so much more depth to him that I've never been able to get into my work as Professor Flitwick.
Large contact lenses and dentures complemented the look. Now, you might want to ask how Warwick Davis managed to play all these characters in a way that only the most eagle-eyed viewers can notice that it was the same actor. Here's what Davis says about it. You have to approach each character differently. It starts with the way they think, then add body language and posture. They become distinct and different automatically. It wasn't a conscious effort. Well, the simpler answer is this guy's a master of transformation.
I suppose I'm stretching my acting muscles a little bit farther than I have been able to in previous films.
And one more thing that you probably want to know is why the versions of Professor Flitwick are so different that they even look like 2 different professors. Well, it happened because of the change of directors who saw the series differently. Did you agree with the changes? Share in the comments below. But for now, we're moving on. A stunt double for Hagrid. Since he was half giant, it's logical that there was a lot of effort involved to make the Keeper of Keys and Grounds look considerably taller than the rest of the cast. Although Robbie Coltrane is quite a tall actor, his height still wasn't enough. So in some of the scenes, they required a double for the actor. It was Martin Bayfield, a guy who is nearly 7 feet tall. To look like a half giant, he had to wear a fat suit underneath Hagrid's iconic overcoat, as well as an animatronic head that looked very much like Robbie Coltrane's face. Mostly it was required for far away and full body shots, so no one even noticed the difference.
I've no idea how much the costume weighs, but it's quite heavy and it gets really, really hot.
Since sometimes Bayfield had to wear this huge costume for hours, it was fitted with water tubes to keep him cool. So he probably was somewhat comfortable most of the time.
Known as Team Hagrid, and I've been working with these guys now for 10 years, and you make very, very strong friendships. They're a great group.
Besides a body double, the crew also used forced perspective and cleverly designed sets to make everyone look considerably smaller than Hagrid. Well, what can we say? They did a great job, and many viewers probably thought that Coltrane was a half giant in real life. How do you make someone inflate? Aunt Marge's character only appeared once in The Prisoner of Azkaban, but the scene was so memorable that we couldn't miss it, especially since the crew made such a huge effort to turn her into a giant balloon without the use of CGI. That's right, they actually inflated the actress who played Aunt Marge. Around 20 people spent 4 months creating an inflatable costume, and it included 3 stages of prosthetics, weighing about 50 pounds to make it happen. They also used special pumps and degassing chambers to inflate and deflate different parts of Aunt Marge's body. And to make her face swell, they needed inflatable bladders modeled after the actress's appearance. So yeah, the scene mostly used practical effects, and CGI was only used for removing wires and floating. But filming it wasn't easy. Pam Ferris, the actress behind Aunt Marge, even passed out once during filming because her complicated costume involved so many layers. But it was all worth it, wasn't it? Lucius could have looked very different. According to an initial plan, Draco's father was to wear a pinstripe suit and have short black and white hair. But when Jason Isaacs got the role and researched his character, he immediately realized that Lucius just couldn't look like that. He was a racist, a eugenicist. There's no way he would cut his hair like a muggle or dress like a muggle, the actor commented. So he suggested a series of changes to Malfoy Sr.'s image. That's how he got that long blonde hair and clothes that made him look a bit like Count Dracula.
It was fantastic, and I flounced out the room.
And it was also his idea to get a walking stick and have Lucius pull his wand out of it. Needless to say, the director loved all of these changes because they made the character so much more impressive. But the look had to be slightly changed in the final films. To show that he was under immense pressure and stress, the makeup crew made Isaacs look really pale and even created bags under his eyes. Sure, it was no Voldemort's face or Harry's gills, but the makeup was still quite heavy. And finally, the most challenging makeup ever. To film the epilogue, there was the option of recasting the main trio and replacing them with older actors. But the director David Yates absolutely didn't want to do it. He felt that using the same actors for the final scene was like a full circle for the series, and we can understand him. But it definitely posed a problem because the young actors had to look like they were in their late 30s. This is where the makeup team stepped in. It might seem like applying aging makeup would be no big deal for them because they'd already done so much and created so many different creatures in the previous films, but it was trickier than you think. We had all sorts of goblins and weird-looking people, a real catalog of makeup and makeup effects, but we always regarded that sequence as the one that would be the most taxing, said the makeup effects designer Nick Dudman. After all, they could create goblins in whatever way they wanted, and no one would say a thing because they're magical creatures. But if someone said, "No, it's not Daniel Radcliffe," that would be a bigger problem, and it nearly happened. The first round of makeup looked so bad that the crew even started questioning whether they needed to make that epilogue scene at all. But then they decided to try once again and scale the makeup back considerably. They stopped trying to make them look older, but instead made them more mature. And it was a good decision. Did you like the end result? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you liked this video, don't forget to watch the one we made about the struggles the Harry Potter cast had to endure on the set. And stay awesome!